Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, my guest today, if there was a picture in a dictionary, would be synonymous with lifestyle medicine. He is not only a past president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, he is really the one that brought it to Loma Linda, and I had the privilege, that's a combination of pleasure and privilege, of him being my personal physician when I lived in the desert. Now I can actually see him virtually. And if you're interested in a lifestyle medicine doctor, his practice is open to virtual patients as well as in-person patients in Riverside, California. Today, he's going to be talking about the third pillar of healthy nutrition, and his name is Dr. Wayne Dysinger. Please welcome him to the show. You're one of my favorites, just so you know. I've always really admired you and your work.
Thank you. And it's such an honor to be here. I mean, Chef AJ, what you do is amazing. I talk about it with my patients all the time. I refer my patients to you and your programs and your resources all the time. And I know for a fact that your audience is amazing too, because a lot of your audience are my patients. Well, not a lot of, but multiple of your audience is my
yes well I send them
patients.
to you. I tell people, people like they just don't understand. They're always sending us emails seriously every day to our help desk and posting on Facebook and Instagram, I have this disease, I have that disease, and I'm like, just see a plant-based lifestyle medicine doctor. And even if you have to pay a little bit out of pocket, I don't know, I understand that people have insurance and we pay a lot for it, but your health is your greatest wealth, and you can't be skimping on health. And it's like I said, when you were first on, until you have a lifestyle medicine doctor, you really haven't gone to a doctor. I mean, you had treatment, you've had pills and potions and procedures, because you guys get to the root cause. You don't just put a Band-Aid on it. So, and it's so different, because I remember our first sessions with you was like, oh my God, we're here a long time. You're like asking us all these questions, like, what do we eat? And what are our social connections? It was like nobody, I was like 60. Nobody ever asked me that before.
Yeah. And that's sort of my life passion. And we talked first time I was on your show. That's what we talked about, is what is a lifestyle medicine doctor. And I'm always happy to talk about that, because it's sort of my life passion. That's not what I prepared myself to talk about today, but I can say a little bit about that at the end, and just give people some ideas who are looking for a lifestyle medicine doctor, because I can tell you it's progressing rapidly. This availability of a doctor who thinks and practices differently. It's progressing rapidly, and it needs to be.
Well, it's a specialty now. It didn't, when my grandfather graduated medical school in the 1920s, there was no lifestyle medicine physician.
It is a specialty now, becoming more and more of a specialty. It's a totally different philosophy. I mean, a lifestyle medicine doctor starts by thinking, you're a whole person. My job is to bring your life into balance so that your body can heal itself. That's where they start off. And then they'll add medications or supplements or other things if they're needed. But they start off by trying to get the body into balance and allowing the body to heal itself. Whereas a typical doctor practices what we call allopathic reductionism, where they sort of say, let's break things down, figure out what's broken and fix what's broken. Well, the problem with that is a lot of times, it's not a quote thing that's broken, because it's literally the body's out of balance, and so then doctors spend all this time trying to figure out what's broken, and then people get things like fibromyalgia or irritable bowel that they're not broken things, they're just the body being out of balance, but doctors sort of keep putting these tags and then keep throwing medications or procedures or whatever at these tags. And even things like low back pain or headaches or so many different things, it's generally not because something's broken, it's because something's out of balance, and it's a different philosophy.
And it's not entirely the doctor's fault, right? Because they don't really learn preventative medicine in medical school.
No, they're not trained. It's the training system's fault. It's our society's fault, really. I mean, we're the ones that created the current system, but the nice thing is we have the opportunity to change that, and that's what the lifestyle medicine movement is about. It's about changing that.
It's so cool. And I recommend, if people are plant-based themselves, even if they can't get a doctor that's certified in lifestyle medicine, at least go to a plant-based doctor, because they at least aren't going to tell you crazy things like, oh, you got to have meat, you got to have milk, you get all those kind of things.
Right. Right.
So your presentation is called the third pillar of healthy nutrition, but the truth is I don't know what the first and the second is, other than maybe just eat plants and don't eat crap.
Yeah, and I did that on purpose because I figured, I mean, you do know what the first and second pillars are.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been defined in that way. But I figured a lot of people would say that, and so yeah, I'll talk about the first and second pillars briefly, but I'm mainly going to talk about the third pillar.
Okay, just make sure to speak a little bit more loudly because your voice just trailed a little bit.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, you ready to start your presentation? I
am. So I'll share my screen here and just get it to look nice.
Perfect.
So the third pillar of healthy nutrition. So these are the pillars. This is sort of what the lifestyle medicine movement globally has come to believe as far as how our nutrition philosophy should be focused. And it comes from Michael Pollan's book, In Defense of Food. And on the head of lettuce there, wrapped around that is a yellow ribbon, and it says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So to me, that's a wonderful, concise summary of what we should be doing as far as nutrition is concerned. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So the first pillar is eat food. And when Michael Pollan says eat food, he's talking about whole food. And this is always a concept that's a little hard to define. So when I talk about whole food, I like that little sentence I have on this slide say, what's happened with this between when it was grown and when it's going in your mouth? And if nothing much has happened to it, then it's whole food. But if it's gone through significant changes, then it's a processed food. Now, scientifically, we have this thing called this NOVA food classification groups that divides foods into 4 categories, the unprocessed or minimally processed. Minimally processed would be things like you cut it, or you steamed it, or maybe it was frozen first. Those would be minimally processed. Unprocessed means you changed nothing to it. You picked it and you ate it. Processed culinary ingredients, that's things that you find in your kitchen. So it's things like salt, maybe sugar, maybe a little oil, other sort of more spice sort of processed culinary ingredients. So generally, that's not as healthy as unprocessed. And different people need different approaches to that. Some people are, we use the term SOFAs free, which actually I think may have come from your world, Chef AJ. SOFAs free means sugar, oil. Let's see, I didn't put that slide in, but sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, and salt free.
I actually think I made it up, to be quite honest.
So you're the one that created it.
Well, I don't want to take, credit if somebody else thinks they did, but what was happening, if you don't mind me interrupting, is I was always using the term that I learned from Dr. Goldhammer, SOS free, sugar, oil, and salt free. And when I was starting my ultimate weight loss program like 10 years ago, people were still drinking alcohol and still eating flour, which, I don't feel are health promoting foods, but they're also very calorically dense. They're also addictive and not favorable for weight loss. And so I said Dr. Goldhammer about this, and he said, well, people should know that SOS means no refined carbohydrates. And I said, well, they don't. So I changed the acronym when I wrote my book to SOFAs free, because it seemed like a good metaphor that if you wanted to get healthy and lose weight, you needed to get off the sofas, both figuratively, like meaning exercise, and the sugar, oil, flour, alcohol, salt.
Yeah, well, so full credit to you. Again, you're a pioneer and you're amazing in this world. And
well, thanks.
So I have a slide. I don't have it here, but I have a slide as a sofa. Has a big red circle with a cross through it, no sofas. And it talks about being sofas free. And I think that's the ideal, but I also, just to be honest, I say on that slide, it's really hard to be 100% sofa free. And, some people need to be and want to be and pull that off. But not everybody has to be 100% sofas free. but having that visual of sugar, oil, flour, I think the flour is incredibly important to put in. And just to be clear, that's why keto diets and paleo diets have gotten as much traction as they have, because they're flour free, basically. And that's important. They're sugar and flour free, basically. And that's actually very important. So anyways, that's processed coloring ingredients. Processed foods are things where you substantially changed it. So for instance, when you go from wheat to bread or wheat to pasta, you become a processed food. If you go from potato to mashed potato, especially if you take the peeling off, and you add in some other ingredients, you become a processed food. If you go from even apples to applesauce, you become a processed food, because again, you've removed some things, you've substantially changed how it looks. And then the ultra processed food is the bad stuff. That's what 65% or so of Americans, their calories come, about 65% of calories for the average American comes from ultra processed food, which is just ridiculous. But that's the stuff that's really killing us. And that's obviously the things that you can't find in your kitchen. If you read the ingredients label, you don't have these chemicals, these other preservatives and flavorings and colorings. So that's the bad stuff. And so, that's the first goal as far as nourishment, is eat whole food. And I think it's the first for a reason. It's the most important one. Mostly plants is actually, when you read Michael Pollan, he says, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So technically, this is the third one. But I'm calling this the second one. We talk about whole food, plant-based. And for purposes of Chef AJ, we use the word predominantly plant-based. For purposes of Chef AJ and her audience, I will say 100% plant-based.
That's another word I coined, was plant exclusive, because people kept saying they were plant-based, and that could be 51% plants and 49% junk food or animal products. So I always tell people I'm plant exclusive, because then I feel like I'm in an exclusive club. I'm plant exclusive.
Yeah. And I'm 100% supportive of that. But I will tell you, as I go around the world talking about lifestyle medicine in different cultures, we don't always jump to plant exclusive right away, but we always head that direction. And it depends on your disease process and a variety of different things. But mostly plants is there for a reason. I think it should be, I have another slide where we talk about 95-5, 95% plant-based, 5% animal-based. But that's going to vary. And again, for your audience, I'll say 100% plant-based. So that's sort of the second, what I'm calling the second pillar. And then the third pillar is this not too much. And that's the one that we talk about the least, although there's been more and more traction around this in a variety of different publications on the internet, other things. So the purpose of what I'll be talking about over the next few minutes is just really to give you five guidelines, 5 things that you can do, that all of us can do relatively easily around this not too much. What do we mean when we say not too much? What does that look like in a practical, real-time way? So these are the 5 guidelines, and I'm going to go over each one of them more specifically. So the first one is to actually eat less frequently. And I will say this guideline comes from a researcher by the name of Walter Longo. Walter Longo has written a book called The Longevity Diet. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, consider buying it. And he's a researcher that looks at how do we help people live longer? How do we help them have a long, healthy life? And one of the best pieces of data that we have around longevity is that you're more likely to live long if you eat less. So Walter Longo says one of your guidelines should be to eat only 2 meals a day. And he says, if you look at 2 meals a day, always eat breakfast. There's a lot of data that breakfast actually helps. It actually helps you lose weight. And I always love the analogy, if you're going on a car trip, do you fill up your gas tank before you start the trip or after the trip? Obviously, you fill it up before because you need the gas as you're going on the trip. Same with our bodies. We need the nourishment as we're going through the day. So always include breakfast. And then Walter Longo says the second meal can be a lunch or a dinner or something in between. He says it's okay if your environment requires you to have sort of a third meal or sets you up to have a third meal. Just make that third meal a snack. So that's what I personally do, because I always have my breakfast. We like to have a big family dinner. I always have a lunch break. So I will just have a few vegetables, maybe a couple nuts or something like that. I say always. I'm not a perfect eater, unfortunately. I'm not as good as Chef AJ, I know that, but I do eat healthy, and a large percent of my lunches, it's not really a lunch, it's just a little vegetable snack. So that's the first guideline, and just a little interesting data around this. So this comes from Dr. Jason Fung, who's one of the people who talks a lot about fasting, and what he shows here is how frequently we eat. This on the left was this on the left is actually children, and this on the right is adults. But we have this dark line here is 1977 to 78, and then the next line with the triangles is 1994 to 1998. So it's close to 20 years difference there. And then we have another line, which is this sort of lighter gray line with the diamonds, and that's just 10 years or so later, 2003 to 2006. But what you can see through that time, back in the day, we only ate 2 meals a day, two to 3 meals a day. The most frequent amount of eating for both adults and children was close to 3 meals, but a lot of people were 2. A few people were more than that. But then the top of the graph has moved along. So the most frequent now is closer to 5 times a day for both adults and kids. That's part of what's taking us the wrong direction, is we're just eating more frequently. And Walter Longo says, if you eat more frequently, you're more likely to have more calories. And I remember even myself as a physician, say 15 years ago, I used to tell people to eat frequently to try to lose weight, because there was this theory out there that if you have small amounts, then you won't overeat as much, you'll be less hungry. But the data shows otherwise. So going towards a 2 meal a day or a 2 meal and a snack day per day makes sense. So before we go to the next two, I just want to go through some definitions. So we hear a lot about this term intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting from a scientific perspective is actually 2 different things. The first is, from a scientific terminology, called time-restricted eating or time-restricted feeding. And that's where you don't eat for a certain number of hours per day. So I'm going to talk about that. And then the other term that goes under intermittent fasting is something that we call periodic fasting. So there's this 5-2 fast diet developed by Michael Mosley. And there's a variety of other things, and I'm going to talk more about that. But I just want to differentiate that I don't use the term intermittent fasting because it confuses these 2 different concepts. So we're going to use the term time-restricted feeding and periodic fasting. So for time-restricted feeding, this is probably something you're familiar with. It's the idea that you eat all of your food within a specified time period. Usually that time period needs to be 12 hours or less. I personally try to do the 12 hours, so I don't get too much more restrictive than that. But a lot of people go down to 10 or 8 hours, and that's all pretty fair, pretty safe. So if your living situation allows you to eat all of your food within 8 hours, that's great. Go for it. What I don't support so much is if you try to go even less than that, go down to 6 hours or 4 hours, because that's just not sustainable. It's really hard long-term to get all of your food within a 6 or 4 hour time period. And there's some scientific evidence that actually may increase your risk for gallbladder disease and some other issues as well. So when we talk about time-restricted feeding, we're looking at this 8, 10, or 12-hour time frame that we encourage our patients to do. And again, all 5 of these suggestions are something that all of us could be doing, and I could even make the case that there's enough science behind it that all of us should be doing components of all 5 of these. But just a little bit of data around this time-restricted feeding. Again, this comes from Dr. Jason Fung. So this is just showing that people who do time-restricted feeding uses, you hear the term as TRF. People who do that have things like lower insulin levels. They have greater cell responsiveness. These are physiologic parameters that actually change when you have time-restricted feeding versus positive physiologic parameters. So physiologically, we know it makes a difference. And what I find is interesting here is it actually changes things like our desire to eat, our capacity to eat, our hunger. So people who have time-restricted feeding, they're actually less hungry than people who don't do time-restricted feeding. You would think it would be the other way around, but our bodies love rhythms. And if we really give our bodies these regular rhythms, that hunger actually gets better, not worse. And the fullness actually gets better as well. So these are how we feel about food actually changes. It's not just positive physiologic changes. The third guideline that we talk about is regular partial fast days. So the idea behind a regular partial fast day is you'll choose one day, or what Dr. Mosley did was a 5-2, so you choose 2 days a week. And on those days, you eat less. You just eat less on those days. Usually what you're shooting for is a 600 or 800 calorie day. And usually you again like to make a rhythm out of that. So for me, my partial fast day is Thursdays. I have to be honest, I don't do that every week. I wish I did it every week, but I do have it as part of my routine. Now, what you eat on that partial fast day can be there's a variety of ways you can approach it. In one of my follow-up slides, I'll give you a little more details of what a 600 or 800 calorie day might look like. What this does is it reminds you that you have the power to control your eating choices. It reminds your mind and it reminds your body. And we actually need that because our society has culturally taken us to this place of, feed your cravings. You just, and all this food is out there that just draws you in. So sometimes we just have to remind our body, guess what? You don't have to have every food that's sitting in front of you. You don't have to make the choice to eat. You can make the choice to just not eat. So this is a slide where I talk about the different formats, different ways that you can actually do a 600 or 800 calorie day. This slide actually talks about the 1 through 5 day fasting, which I'm going to talk about in a couple more slides. But what I want to point out here is that our favorite 800 calorie day is what we show here. It's 400 calories of vegetables. And guess what? You can eat a lot of vegetables for 400 calories. You can have close to 10 cups. So if you're eating that much vegetables, you're volume-wise, you're full, right? You don't need a whole lot volume-wise.
Can I ask you something before I forget? Like, I don't eat nuts. So, I mean, not that I want to even do this, but there are people that don't eat nuts for a variety of reasons. Dr. Esselstyn's patients, allergic, food addiction. I mean, to me, that sounds very unsatisfying. I would much rather eat starch than nuts for 400 calories.
So yes, there are people that try to do a very low-fat diet. And so Chef AJ, do you eat avocado?
No, I haven't had any overt fats. Since I lost my weight when I started January 2nd, 2012, I went 10 years without any overt fats. And then working with Dr. Lyle and Dr. Goldhammer personally over a period of 3 months, I tried to slowly introduce them and I gained weight exponentially. So I don't, and I get my omega-3 fatty acid levels checked every month. They're extremely high because I eat lots of greens, but my body does not thrive with fat. And it doesn't satisfy me. And all it does is make me want to just keep eating fat. Whereas if I eat a huge 1.5 pound sweet potato for lunch, I'm good for, hours and hours. And I eat it with a pound of vegetables.
Right. And so obviously in your situation, you wouldn't be going for option 2. You might be going for option 3, which is on that day, you only eat potatoes.
Yes, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. So that's an option. If you wanted to have vegetables, the idea behind option 2 actually comes from Dr. Longo. And you can see on option 4, he has a commercial product that he actually sells called Prolone, which is it's a particular mix of carbohydrates and fats and protein. So the vegetable nut tries to get at that similar mix. But if you're trying to do an 80-10-10, or get 10% of your calories protein and 10% fat, you're not going to do option 2. You're going to do option 3, or you can make your own options. You can make an option that this is my fruit day. I only eat fruit on this day, or this is my vegetable only day. I only eat vegetables on this day. So these are the options that we use the most in our practice. Option 2 by far the most, but we also use option 3 regularly. I don't push option 4 very much, simply because it's more expensive, and it's also a little more processed. And I'm all for doing things economically, and I'm all for doing things whole food as much as possible. Okay, so the 4th guideline is periodic prolonged fasting. This also directly comes from Dr. Longo. And you can see his recommendations here. He recommends that every individual, so every person listening to this right now, should twice a year go for a 5-day fast. 5-day fast twice a year. And he says for certain diseases, and we actually do this in our practice, for certain diseases, we'll put people on a 5-day fast every single month. So that's a bit of a hard thing to do. But in our practice, we do it as a group. We actually do all 4 of these options in our group fast. But we do group fast because I find, for me personally, if I'm fasting with 20 or 30 other people, which is about the number that we'll have in our groups, I stick to my fast. I actually follow it because I've got this whole group of people that are accountable to me. If I try to do a 5-day fast on my own, sometimes I can pull through, but sometimes I'm like, well, no one really cares. I'm hungry, and I just don't pull through. So we do it as a group. Most people do the vegetable nut fast. Chef AJ would definitely do the potato fast for 5 days. There's other variations you can put in there. But the point is, you go down to that 600 or 800 calories for 5 days twice a year. That's what Dr. Longo recommends. And I asked Dr. Longo once, so why wouldn't you just go down to water only for 5 days twice a year? And he sort of gave a nuanced response, but I'm pretty sure he would say water only is better for 5 days. But water only, a couple of things about that. One is, you probably should talk to your doctor before you did a water only fast for 5 days. It's a little more complicated and there's higher risk. So if someone who's listening goes out there and does a 5-day fast with water only, just make sure you know that I recommended that you see your doctor first before that. The other thing about water only is it's just plain harder. And some of us, I know Chef AJ's audience, there's a lot of people with pretty good willpower, but not all of us have great willpower, and not all of our friends and neighbors have great willpower. And sometimes it's just hard to stick to a water only. It's not easy. I've done it before, and it's a challenge. So, but 800 calories, that's still a challenge. It's still hard, but it's doable, especially if you're doing it in a group. So just a little bit about the physiology of what's happening when you're doing 800, when you're doing a 5-day fast. You can see here, so our body runs on glucose, right? So all of our cells need glucose to function. Our muscle cells, our brain cells, our digestive cells, all of it needs glucose to run. So our body needs a certain level of glucose. So the red line is glucose. Now, generally, we get that glucose just from the meal that we ate last. So that's the blue line, the light blue line there, the exogenous dietary glucose. But that glucose, when it's coming in the form of a carbohydrate or coming in the form of obviously the proteins and the fats go to do other different things in our body, but our body is also capable of converting that protein and that fat into glucose as well. But primarily what it converts into glucose is carbohydrates, which is why if you're a fan like Chef AJ is of 80% of your calories coming from carbohydrates, it actually makes sense because it's easy for the body to convert carbohydrates into glucose. And that's the key thing our body uses. So this blue line, if you have a higher starch diet, it's going to go out further. If you have a higher fiber diet, it's going to go out further. If you have more of a simple carb diet, you go through that glucose very quickly. But most of us sort of in a balanced diet, it's going to last 4 to 6 hours or so. So what happens when our body starts running out of that glucose? Well, then we start using glycogen. So glycogen is primarily stored in the liver. It's also stored a little bit in our muscles. So we use that glycogen, and those glycogen stores, you can see here in this graph, it goes out for 3 weeks or so, 20 days or so. But the majority of it is used up in the first day or so. And then once our body starts running out of that glycogen, we start doing this thing called gluconeogenesis, which is the purple line there at the bottom, where our body is actually converting fat. Primarily, it starts off with fat. It converts fat into sugar, so our body can continue to run. So that's when we hear of ketogenesis. Ketogenesis is sort of analogous with gluconeogenesis. You're converting fat to sugar, and so our body keeps going because we have this sugar. So the point behind a longer fast is that you want some of that gluconeogenesis, part of sort of our body's detoxing, you could say. And so that's one of the reasons why this 5-day fast is valuable. So just a little bit about that. So this is a study done by Dr. Longo where he did the 5-day fast, the first 5 days of every month for 3 months in a row. And what he came out of this is cycles of a 5-day fasting mimicking diet or this 5-day fast are safe, feasible, and effective in reducing markers. So specifically, what are those markers? So I'm just going to show you a couple here, but one is this IGF-1. IGF-1 stands for insulin growth factor. And we know that insulin growth factor is one of the better ways we can guess how long someone's going to live. So if you have a lower insulin growth factor, you're more likely to have a longer life. If you have a higher insulin growth factor, you're more likely to have a shorter life. And guess what? If you fast for 5 days every month for 3 months in a row, your insulin growth factor actually drops. And you can see on the left-hand side of this slide that if your insulin growth factor started off low, so if you're pretty healthy starting off, you still get a drop, but it's not as much. If you were not so healthy starting off, if your insulin growth factor was higher starting off, then you have a much more dramatic drop. You can drop it as much as 50 nanograms per milliliter, which is pretty significant. That's like a 25% drop or so. Same thing with glucose. If you have high blood sugar, doing this fasting mimicking diet, these 5 days of fasting drops it. Same with CRP. CRP is an inflammatory marker. So again, if you have high inflammation in your body, this fasting mimicking diet does it. So one of the diseases that I will put people on this 5-day fast every month for a period of time is things like rheumatoid arthritis, where there's a lot of inflammation going on in the body, because this helps with that. So that's basically, well, actually, no, I have a couple more slides. So I'll just talk about this slide. So people, when we talk about fasting, people will say, that doesn't sound very balanced, and lifestyle medicine is all about balance. But part of the challenge is in our society, we're unbalanced the other direction. So fasting brings us back into balance. It sort of gives our body that chance to pause, to take a deep breath, and to bring us back into to the balance that our body likes and needs to stay healthy. So the fifth guideline is to eat mindfully. This is the concept that you're not multitasking when you eat. You're eating slowly. You're chewing your food thoroughly. You're savoring. You're noticing what you're eating, and you're just fully experiencing this wonderful thing that we get to do on a regular basis called eating. So that is what I was going to talk about. So the 5 guidelines: eat less frequently through the day. Try to have a period of time when you actually don't put calories into your body, time restricted feeding. Take a day every week, or sometimes some people 2 days, where you just have a lower calorie intake. At least twice a year, go for a longer fast, a 5-day fast. And then in all the eating you do, try to be mindful. And I will stop there. This is information for my practice if you're interested. So we have a website, lifestylemedical.com. You can email us at info@lifestylemedical.com if you're interested. We legally only take patients from California. We've been known to have patients from outside California, but legally we're only allowed to take patients from California. But you can visit our website. I think there's a video from Chef AJ on there. We have a bunch of menus on there, a bunch of other resources there. We have 3 doctors in our practice and 1 nurse, 1 physician's assistant, and we're accepting new patients. So if you want, I will say personally, my personal patient panel is full. So you would see one of our other physicians if you joined our practice right now. But just a little bit more about lifestyle medicine as a whole. Our practice is in Southern California. We have 2 offices, one in Redlands, one in Riverside. But if you're in another part of the country, I would encourage you to go to a website called Poplar Health. And that's the developing commercial network of lifestyle medicine doctors around the country. So there's practices in Texas and Florida and Delaware and Pennsylvania and a variety of other places, Poplar. And you can always, if you're not in a place where there's a Poplar practice around, you can always go to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine website. In fact, let me just, if you'll allow me to, Chef AJ, I will just take people through this. So can you see this slide?
Yep.
So this is the website for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. You can just go here where it says find a provider and just hit that. And can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can just hit lifestyle medicine physician is really what you want. And then you can just put your address in. So I'm going to put my address, my zip code, 92354 is my zip code. And then I hit find members. And hopefully you can see this as well. So this is everybody that's within 25 miles of every lifestyle medicine certified physician within 10 miles of my house. So you can see exactly where they are. You can see their names. This is one of my partners. Obviously, I'm there. This is another one of my partners. So anybody can do that any place you live in the U.S. So it's pretty easy to find someone who's board certified in lifestyle medicine. Now, not everybody who's board certified has a lifestyle medicine practice. Everybody in that popular network has actually a lifestyle medicine practice, but at least you have a lot of good resources here. So I will again stop there.
And so what is that website you just showed us? Because I want to make sure it's in the show notes.
That's the American College of Lifestyle Medicine website.
Okay, that's
so
great.
ACLM, ACLM.org. It's actually lifestylemedicine.org.
Thank you.
And I will tell you, there are now over 2,000 physicians in the U.S. who are board certified in lifestyle medicine. And we just finished another cohort, and we expect another 600 or so. We're having 500 to 600 new physicians every year get certified in this. So it's rapidly growing. There's now close to 200 residencies that are training people in lifestyle medicine. So this idea of having a different kind of doctor is becoming more and more available to people.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you for doing that. Hey, I have some questions that appeared in the chat and also that a couple people sent in advance if you have time to answer.
Of course.
A lot of people are saying, if I fasted for 5 days, I would die. It's hard for people. It really is.
Yeah. And I will say, it's actually not for everyone. So we've been doing fasting in our practice now for 4 or 5 years. And so I've taken, I don't know, hundreds of people through 5-day fasts. And I've had the profile that I've seen it to be the hardest with is a slender, older female. That's the profile that I've seen it to be harder with. And I don't think everybody can handle that. Although if you do the 800 calories, almost pretty much everyone can handle 800 calories for 5 days. It sounds hard, but it's doable.
Wow. Let's see. Here's a question for somebody. I think it happened when you were showing the different options, and Monica's saying, of the options you showed, what is the best one for people with blood sugar issues?
So if you have blood sugar issues, it depends what issues you have. It depends. So if you're on diabetic medications, you should talk with your doctor before you do a longer fast. But if your issues are with low blood sugar, then you're going to want to do something that gives you a steadier blood sugar, which is probably not the 5-day water fast. It's probably more either the vegetables and nuts or the potato only. That's going to give you something that's a little steadier from a blood sugar issue perspective.
Great. People are asking about where to get their fatty acid levels checked. And I put in the chat that my understanding is every lab does it, even without a doctor's order. It's not like you can just go. It's called a fatty acid profile, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I mean, Quest does it, LabCorp does it. Those are the biggest labs around. But yeah, those are just ask your doctor. A lot of doctors don't order it a whole lot, but going direct to the labs, maybe you can just go direct to the labs. I don't even know that, to be honest, but yeah, it's not super hard to
yeah, no, it's pretty common test. And my understanding is, at least with Quest, I'm always getting emails saying you can order whatever you want. You don't need a doctor's order, just come on in. So they should check it out for sure. Aaron is asking, where did it go? Do you think an underweight woman who does not have any eating disorder should avoid fasting?
So an underweight woman who doesn't have an eating disorder, should you avoid fasting?
Yes, that's the question.
So I just gave my example of underweight women being the ones that are challenged the most, but that's primarily if you're going for a water fast. Dr. Longo's data, in the way I read his data, and he's a solidly respected researcher, he says everybody including underweight women with no eating disorders, should do a 5-day fast twice a year. Now, he says those 5-day fasts should be 800 calories. And just to give you perspective, if you're a smaller, underweight woman, you might be surviving on 1,500 calories a day. Some smaller people don't need a lot of calories just for their maintenance. So you're not going dramatically lower. I'm a larger male, so my typical calorie intake is probably 2,500 calories. So when I go to 800 calories, I'm cutting out 2/3 to 3/4 of what I usually eat. So it's a little harder, but obviously I have these reserves, probably too many reserves, that my body can get me through. So you have less reserve, but you're also making less of a change when you go to that 800 calories as a smaller woman. So probably not every scientist would agree with Dr. Longo that everybody needs to do 5 days twice a year. But I can tell you, for me personally and for my patients, it works well. It works really well.
Great, thank you. People are saying, did you say poplar with an E or poplar with an A?
Poplar with an A. So
Poplar.
Poplar, like the tree, poplar.
Perfect.
So, and they do have a website that's that you can Google and find out where their practices are. That's a new organization, so it's very much evolving. It's primarily based out of a Dr. Dave Donahue in Delaware. He's the primary guy that's running it, but my practice is part of the Poplar Network.
Poplar is going to become popular, hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Jennifer says, thank you for the wonderful presentation. And Mona says, I love that doctors are adapting a healthy lifestyle medicine approach. Heidi says, can you mention the lifestyle medicine updates in New York City?
Yeah, I mean, Chef AJ, you probably can do that as good as I, but obviously the mayor of New York City is a 100% plant-based mayor, and Eric Adams. And the reason why he's a 100% plant-based mayor is he got diagnosed with diabetes. He did some research. He found that if he went plant-based, he reversed his diabetes. So he did. He was starting to have retinopathy, some eye issues and whatever, and all of that normalized once he went 100% plant-based. So he's behind it. And there's physicians there too. There's a Michelle McMacken, who's a 100% plant-based physician. And he's hired her to bring plant-based options throughout New York City. So basically, the New York City runs clinics, and there's at least one clinic in every borough that has resources to help people go plant-based in those clinics. And I will also say there was just an announcement just within the last week where the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has produced a set of resources that they're making available for free. They're estimating it's $42 million worth of resources that they're making available for free for every health care provider. So if you have a doctor that you want to move along this path, just tell them to go to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and they can learn about it for free. They can get several hours of continuing medical education there. And it basically talks about the science behind plant-based eating and lifestyle medicine as a whole. But a core pillar of lifestyle medicine is whole food plant-based, the 3 pillars that we talked about. So anyways, all of that, the city of New York is pushing providers in New York to take advantage of these free resources that the American College of Lifestyle Medicine has made.
Thank you. Jennifer says, what are some of the challenges for water fasting for women that are small face? Like, is it headaches or lightheadedness? So what are the challenges?
It's lightheadedness, it's dizziness. It's just feeling weak and dizzy.
That's what I got. I tried that. I didn't try water fasting, but twice I've water fasted for 40 hours because there was something going on. Like one time I just wasn't feeling well, and one time my dog had died. I wasn't intending to it. And I ate dinner like it's Sunday. It finished at 6. And I was okay the next day, but when I woke up Tuesday morning, it was like like the room was spinning, and I wasn't even
Right.
hungry. But yeah, and when I was fat, it was so easy to fast. It was so easy.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, and interestingly, we do not talk about fasting as an approach to lose weight. Obviously, you do lose weight when you're fasting, but we talk about the benefits of fasting as lowering those inflammatory markers, building up the immune system, so doing a bit of a detox in our system, increasing the chances that we'll live longer. Those are the benefits. That's why we fast. It's not about losing weight. If you want to lose weight, do what Chef AJ did. She just started eating healthier.
I know, and it's funny,
that's the way to lose weight.
I interviewed Dr. Doug Lyle yesterday for the upcoming Truth About Weight Loss Summit. And I didn't realize I'm in his PowerPoint now, because people don't realize that it took me 27 months to lose 47 pounds. I did not lose weight quickly. It was like an ounce of fat a day, he said, like he calculated it.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, a couple of people sent questions in advance. And if these are too medical or personal, just tell them that you can't answer. And actually, this person named Keisha is asking for somebody else, but I'll just to thank her for sending it in. I'll read it. Can you please ask Dr. Dysinger, is it safe for my brother to take omeprazole 20 milligrams for 30 days for nausea? His doctor didn't find the root cause, so she prescribed that. Is there any other tests he can do to find the root cause of nausea? He's not whole food, plant-based vegan. And this is just a perfect example. Even if you can't answer this question, we can use an example of why this person needs a lifestyle medicine doctor, because it sounds like the doctor doesn't know the root cause. So she's saying, well, here, just take this medicine 30 days and we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, Chef AJ. And my experience is that you rarely need to use omeprazole if you go use the three nutrition principles that we talked about. You eat whole food, you don't eat too much, and you stay more plant-based, because fat is one of the things that increases your chances of having reflux and those kinds of things. Omeprazole is a fairly safe drug. If you do it for 30 days, that's probably okay, but I think there's better and healthier ways. Omeprazole does increase your chance of kidney issues. It increases, there's reasonably good data that it increases your chances of dementia, actually. So it's not something, there's people that are on omeprazole for years and years. That's not really a good idea. But for 30 days, you're probably relatively safe. But it's not what I would recommend. And if you came to my practice, I would not be putting you on omeprazole. Not to say I would never put you on omeprazole, but that would not be my starting point for sure. And right. I would look for the root causes and then try to. There's a lot of natural things you can do to help with reflux and nausea and those kind of things.
You're right about the fat and oil, because when my husband was just a regular vegan, he had terrible reflux, endoscopies, head of the bed up. We were sliding down, protein pump inhibitors. And when he went oil free, it was gone.
There you go. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, this is more of a comment than a question, but Melissa said, this is for Dr. Dysinger. Please tell him to tell his patients that are parents that to check with what the schools serve for lunch and snacks. The schools I've worked with in New York are not serving healthy lunch, and they give candy for rewards. It's super unhealthy. I wish parents would send in healthy lunches or knew what a healthy lunch is. It's not jelly on white bread.
Yeah, no, great comment. And yeah, we define ketchup as a vegetable, all kinds of crazy things that are out there. We just have to keep pushing. We've got a movement going here. Chef AJ is one of the leaders of that movement. That movement is going towards, these three pillars: whole food, plant-based, not too much.
Yeah. Are your kids healthy eaters, or did you struggle with having them eat healthfully like so many parents do?
Comparatively, my kids are healthy eaters. Do my kids eat as healthy as I want them to eat? Actually, they don't. So we were not rigid in the raising of my kids, but comparatively, they eat lots of vegetables and don't drink sodas and those kind of things. So yeah.
That's fantastic. I always, well, not always, but also often try to prepare for a guest by either reading their book or listening to any podcast they did. And so I listened to a podcast you did about 5 years ago with Dr. Lori Marbus, who's been a frequent guest on the show, and it was wonderful. And you mentioned two terms that I thought were really interesting that I know a little bit about one and not much about the other, but it sounds like these are things you use in your practice: motivational interviewing and positive psychology. I have a book called Motivational Interviewing, but I never read it, but it's probably a good book. But tell us a little bit about how that helps you get to the root cause and work with patients, and how you're also using positive psychology and what that is.
Yeah, so motivational interviewing, the concept behind that is that a patient of mine will do better if they choose their health goals, right? So if I tell them, do this, do this, do this, maybe they'll do it, maybe they won't. But if they say, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, then, and then I help them reach those goals, we're more likely to have success. And in my practice, in the lifestyle medicine practice, a lot about what we do is actually trying to help people change a health behavior, right? So you can't become healthy unless you adjust some of your behaviors. So we're always trying to do that. So having them choose the behaviors they want to adjust. And, when you're good at motivational interviewing, you can generally help people get to the goals that you want them to have, but it's done in a way that they're defining those goals. Positive psychology is recognizing that we all have strengths, we all have areas that we like to focus on. And so it's finding those strengths and helping people to focus on that. In my practice, if you think about your kids and trying to help your kids eat healthy, especially when they're really small, do they do better when you say, use carrots as an example, here's the carrots, you have to eat them now? Or do they do better when you sort of make a game out of it and they enjoy it and you're sort of getting the carrots in their mouth that way? And I use carrots as an example, but it's the classic thing of let's give them the carrot, not the stick. That's what positive psychology is about. And there's a place for the stick as well, but positive psychology is sort of, so I spend a lot of time complimenting my patients. If you're a patient of mine, almost always you get some compliment from me somehow or another, because everybody's good. Everybody has a certain skill. They bring something to the table. So I try to find that thing and reflect it to them, try to share it with them. And that helps them feel good about themselves, which helps them move forward in their health behavior changes.
I think it would be so incredibly hard to be a doctor, and even harder to be a good doctor. Yeah, I mean, you really have to be patient and kind, because it must be frustrating, especially when you know that a lot of what is wrong with people, even if it may not be, they can't help it, they're kind of doing it to themselves.
Yeah. I mean, those are challenges that are out there for sure. And there are certainly days and certainly patients where you're just like, oh, come on. But in this lifestyle medicine business, there are so many great stories, just amazing stories that are so gratifying that it's, the positives so outweigh the negatives. So yes. I'm just grateful for the opportunities that I have as I interact with my patients.
So when is Dr. Dysinger going to write a book?
That would be a good question. I'm doing something right now called The Artist's Way.
What is that?
It's a creative kind of, it's trying to improve your creative processes. So maybe that will be what stimulates me to write a book. But apparently that wasn't my first best skill set, with writing books. So that's okay. None of us can do everything, right?
I know we talked about this right before we went live, but did you mention Healthfully, what that was and what you're doing with them?
Yeah, so my practice was identified by basically, I use the term venture capitalists. It's these people that are out there that they have resources, and they said, hey, we want to help you take your practice model throughout Southern California And so we've talked and we've developed some arrangements, and it's still early days, so I don't want to say too much about it because I've been around life long enough to know that if you start talking too much and things don't quite work out, then it's embarrassing. But so stay tuned. Maybe next time I come on Chef AJ, I can talk about Healthfully, and if it goes the way we want it to go, it'll be a network of 30 or 40 practices like mine throughout Southern California.
Well, you tell me, because you have an open invitation.
I hope I will be back, and I hope I get to talk about that. So.
Oh, just tell me when. Hey, do you have, obviously you're so busy, you have a family and a thriving practice. Do you have time to exercise? And what do you do for exercise?
So I am not perfect. And I like to emphasize that with my patients. I am far from perfect as far as how I implement lifestyle. But I'm pretty decent as far as practicing what I preach. And so I exercise regularly. I pretty much always exercise with someone else because, again, my willpower is not the best of all willpowers. If I have someone else there, then I show up. So this morning I went walking with a friend. Wednesday morning I went running with a friend. I mainly walk or run. That's mainly what I do for exercise. But in the past, I've done triathlon, so I like swimming, I like bicycling. I also, we have 3 pillars on exercise too, which is cardiovascular, strength, and stretching. So I also do yoga a few times a week, and I also do some kind of weightlifting a few times a week. So.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I'm not perfect. People accuse me of being perfect. The only person I think that is actually perfect, if you want to use that word, is Dr. Alan Goldhammer. It's just that, I just have very good habits is what I think. Because I have certain non-negotiables. For example, as a 45-year vegan, I'm not going to eat animal products because there's that ethical underpinning. And I just, as a person that was obese for over 50 years, there's just things I won't eat, like sugar and oil and flour, and I don't have alcohol or caffeine, but I eat salt. I mean, I don't cook with it, but if you go out, there's salt, you know what I mean? Like I'm not like perfect, and I'm lazy too. So, for a while I was perfect, and it's hard to be perfect, but it's kind of fun to see if you can do it just for a little bit, just to see what that feels like. But, condiments have salt, plant milk. So I don't know. I'm not perfect. It's just that I do a really good job of having habits in place. And it gets so easy because they're just habits. Like I don't think about it as perfection. I just think about it as, these are my habits. I wake up, I get on the spin bike. I don't think about it as being, it's just, it's just like a routine is what I mean. It's like I'm in the groove, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Which is the way to do it.
But it's
find that groove that works for you. And
also it's because my motivation is, like what kept, when I first started my weight loss journey for the third and final time, it was to get out of pain. I was in so much pain from this broken knee, and I was so afraid to have surgery because I had almost died from anesthesia the last time I had it. So that was like and they wouldn't do it except under general. And so I would do anything to get out of pain, even eat well. I had no idea I was going to get this slender. But what kept me going is it feels good to be slender and to not be sick. So that's like the motivation to continue, because I know how bad I felt when I was in a wheelchair and couldn't even, go to the bathroom myself. So I think a lot of times, unless people have some kind of a rock bottom, but even then it's so hard. I acknowledge that it's hard for people. That's why they need a good lifestyle medicine doctor like you cheering them on, because you have all these group things that you do. You have the cooking classes, you have the meditation, you have the fast. I really encourage people, if they live in California, to get involved with your practice because it's phenomenal. Nan does those wonderful cooking classes. And like I said, until you've had a lifestyle medicine doctor, especially one that's plant-based, you haven't had a doctor. Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. And
of course, you just put a smile on my face. I appreciate what you do. And I know firsthand you're a great doctor because I've seen you virtually and I've seen you in person.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dysinger. And
Yes.
thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back for a bonus show at 2 p.m. today. Nick DeVorn from Local Spicery is going to be cooking up a cinnamon roasted butternut squash with Brussels sprouts just in time